Recorded. Has the recording started?
Yes.
It has. Good. And can I remind everyone, put your phones to silent mode. If you need to pop out and do a phone call, just sneak out quietly and then come back. And we'll now do to Cedric. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Chair, and morning members and folks there. If when I call your name, if you could confirm your presence. So, Councillor Peter Maben.
Present. Good morning.
Thank you. Councillor Sally Cogley.
Here, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Canning.
Present, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor David Richardson.
Present, Stuart.
Thank you. Councillor Jane Sangster.
Yes, Stuart, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jim Todd.
Here.
Yep. Thanks, Councillor Todd. Councillor William Lennox.
Morning here.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Billy Crawford. Thank you. Councillor June Kyle.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Neil Watts.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Jennifer Hogg.
I'm here, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Stuart. Chair's remarks. Welcome everyone to the meeting, including a couple of visitors. John McCallum, Senior Manager. Hi, John. Is Audit, Fraud, Safety, Risk and Insurance from North Ayrshire Council. And he's visiting in respect of item 3 in the agenda. And also we have Shona Murphy, who's head teacher at Galston Primary. So welcome Shona to the meeting to Galston Scrutiny. And that's in respect of item 5 in the agenda, the Galston Primary School inspection. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Sangster.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In regards item 10, East Ayrshire Performs, under the capital funding, there is a section around Willowbank ESN. I just want to make a transparency declaration. My son attends Willowbank. I'm also chair of the Friends of Willowbank charity, which is a charitable organisation that supports the school, and it's an entirely voluntary role. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sangster, and that's noted. Any other declarations of interest? Okay, previous minutes. Minutes of the meeting held on 24th of April. Are we happy to approve that as a correct record of the previous minutes?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Cogley. I'll just second Councillor Sangster. Any matters arising from the previous minutes anyone wants to discuss? No. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 3 in the agenda. We have a heavy agenda today. It'll help if you have any questions or comments. I'll let the members refer to the page, refer to the paragraph you want to question, comment on. That'll help the other elected members in the room follow where you're going. Item 3 in the agenda is Corporate Fraud Team Annual Report Protecting the Public Purse, and that is Chief Auditor Ailey Mackay. Thank you, Ailey.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members, and thank you for accommodating us at the beginning of the agenda. We have our National Chief Auditors Conference today, which started about half an hour ago, so we will be leaving you as soon as we've delivered our 2 papers here today. The Corporate Fraud Team, as you know, has been up and running since operationally since January 2017. So it's at a level of maturity now, which I think is displayed in the annual reports that we've been bringing to committee year on year, and you also receive a mid-year report in year to update you on activity. So this is the annual report for the year 24-25. So that's the activity from 1st of April 2024 up until 31st of March 2025. So fairly recent in terms of year end. I'm going to highlight a few paragraphs, then hand over to my colleague John McCallum, who's my counterpart at North Ayrshire Council, who actually manages the corporate fraud team on behalf of our shared service. Paragraph 3 reminds us that fraud in the public sector is always going to be with us. There's a pound sign that is usually put against it nationally, and for Scotland, the pound sign that was most recently put against it through the National Fraud Initiative was a cumulative amount of 180 million since the NFI started, and the NFI has been running in Scotland for over 20 years now. So it's of a magnitude that we can't ignore, and we're expected to have mitigations against fraud and error in any council. The background to the corporate fraud team, I think committee knows well, and that's summarised at paragraph 4, noting that Cabinet recently agreed to extend the shared service for a further 3 years till 31st of March 2028. 3 years extensions are the maximum extensions that we've done. It is reviewed on a regular basis in terms of operational outputs and impact for this council. If we move on to paragraph 5, that provides ongoing assurance to committee that as a council, East Ayrshire Council are compliant with the CITFA Code of Practice in managing the risk of fraud and corruption. That's an important element that we need to demonstrate to external audit as well as to committee, and that was previously presented in detail to committee, and that compliance continues. And that compliance is demonstrated through a number of areas, including the fraud risk articulated within the East Ayrshire Performance Report, which will be presented to committee later on today, and indeed in terms of the risk management strategy, which is subject to a separate report today as well. So I oversee the compliance with the CITFA Code of Practice, so I can confirm that we are still compliant with that code, and the corporate fraud team help us to demonstrate that compliance. The roles and responsibilities of the different players in the anti-fraud work are laid out in from paragraph 6 to paragraph 11, and that includes management, elected members, internal audit, and the corporate fraud team. So we all play our parts in that jigsaw, and this report today is about the corporate fraud team element in that larger jigsaw. Paragraph 9 reminds us what the scope of the work is for the corporate fraud team, and that was agreed in the original Cabinet approval back in 2016, has been reviewed regularly, but actually is still fit for purpose. So you can see that most of the areas that risk assess in terms of risk of fraud are within finance and within housing. So it tends to be the services are to Joe McLachlan and Blair Miller's side of the house predominantly, but not exclusively. And if we move on, we've got a cross-reference at paragraph 12 to your risk in the corporate risk register, so risk 6, and you'll be very familiar with that risk from your East Ayrshire performance that I touched on earlier. The governance arrangements are laid out paragraphs 13 and 14, and you should be very aware of those in terms of the reporting that we bring to you, including the report today. I then move on to the main report. So the achievements to date, which are signposted at paragraphs 15 and 16 and relate to Appendix 1 and Appendix 2, which is the stuff you're interested in. It's what are the corporate fraud team doing for the council. So Appendix 1 lays out the detail of what the team have done during the last financial year, and Appendix 2 gives us the cumulative outcomes and the impact for our community since the inception of the service in 2017. And at this point, I'll briefly hand over to John McCallum from North Ayrshire just to illustrate a little bit more about that activity on the ground.
Thanks, Aileen. Thanks, Chair. So starting on page 16 of Appendix 1, that provides an overview of the work that's been carried out by the Corporate Fraud Service in relation to East Ayrshire Council during 24-25. The Corporate Fraud team continues to investigate 100% of all referrals that the team receive, and during 24-25 there were 367 new referrals received by the team. This is an increase on previous year and demonstrates the continued awareness of the service from council staff and from members of the public. 367 referrals that have been received. It also represents the highest single year since the Joint Fraud Service was formed and continues the upward trend that we've seen in recent years. Outcomes themselves, they can be shown in both financial terms and non-financial terms. And in the case of the former, these totaled almost £54,000 during the year, the vast majority of that coming from council tax and NDR related fraud and error. From a non-financial perspective, the corporate fraud team supported housing services in the recovery of 58 tenancies, performing checks and providing intelligence to assist housing services with their outcomes. And the corporate fraud team conducted 40 proactive checks in relation to housing successions, with 3 applications refused following support from the corporate fraud team. When it relates to those housing successions, the corporate fraud team undertake open source research and intelligence kind of reviews, and that helps inform the outcomes from the service to help them support their decisions. One of the other aspects I would possibly highlight in terms of non-financial outcomes relates to the increase in blue badge investigations. There were 25 blue badge investigations during the year that resulted in outcomes, and the breakdown for those is 3 that went to the Procurator Fiscal, 5 badges that were recovered, and there was also 17 warning letters that were issued for misuse of the blue badge. There's a section in the appendix that relates to the NFI exercise, so that's the 2-yearly National Fraud Initiative exercise, and that commenced during 2024, with data submitted to the Cabinet Office in full and on time. The exercise remains on track, and matches have and will continue to be distributed to the relevant teams for further investigation. Finally, the table at Appendix 2 provides, as Ailey has said, provides a comparative view of the outcomes over the last couple of years, but also over the wider course of the service, the Joint Fraud Service. That just really kind of sums it up and provides a summary of the outcomes for the year, and I'm happy to take any questions from the committee. And in fact, I'll pass over to Ailey.
Thank John. So hopefully that gives a good insight into what's been carried out on behalf of East Ayrshire Council over the last year. If I can just touch on a few more paragraphs, and then, as always, we'll happy to take questions. Paragraph 17 is the feedback from the main users of the service in terms of our finance service and housing service. It's very lands positively in terms of that service delivery. The assurance benefits are laid out in paragraph 19. So although the team do make financial recoveries for this council, they also act as a deterrent. They free up time of internal audit, because we've got very different skill sets. Internal auditors are not expected to be fraud investigators, although we do often get involved in that. But we're accountants, we're not fraud investigators, whereas the corporate fraud team staff are trained investigators, and it's a different role, but very much a complementary role. I think the important thing is, although the team are not expected to be self-financing, they do make the recoveries, but paragraph 21 is to always remind members, we need to be careful what we wish for in terms of those financial recoveries, because very high levels of recoveries usually mean that your controls in a council are bad. We are not getting very high levels of recoveries. I'm comfortable with that. I think that it ties in with the work that we do in internal audit, which indicates that generally the controls in this council are of a level, a satisfactory level. Reasonable is the word that I always use in my annual opinion, as you know, and reasonable covers a range of work that we do, but we are not finding anything, any high level of significance around actual fraud and error. They are found, and the fact they're found is good, but they're not being found at a high level, a material level, a significant level. And I can give that assurance to committee. National Fraud Initiative update is laid out in paragraphs 22, 23, and John has touched on that already. Paragraph 24 is again the assurance that committee get from the external audit annual report, where external audit have consistently reported favourably on the arrangements within this council for fraud, anti-fraud arrangements, of which the corporate fraud team and internal audit, as I said earlier, form part of that jigsaw, but their commentary is on the corporate arrangements in its totality, which they have reported on very favourably. And Chair, at that point, I don't think there's anything else I want to highlight in the report, so happy as always to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ailey and John, presenting your report and for all the good work that the fraud team do, investigating and preventing fraud. Councillor Cogley, you want to add on this?
Yeah, thank you very much for the report. And just to emphasise paragraph 21, it's quite obviously pretty much impossible to assess exactly what the deterrent impact is, but I'm sure it's very, very high. So I don't think any of us would expect you to be a self-financing area within the local authority. Thank you.
And Councillor Sangster.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just curious, around Appendix 1, page 17, the blue badge, fraud, 17 warning letters were issued for misuse. Can we clarify what are we talking about with regards to that? Is it people using a badge that's not theirs in order to use a disabled space, or is it something else? Just for clarity, I'm curious.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor. So generally what happens in these cases is where, as you say, it's possibly a family member or a friend that's using that badge. The terms of the blue badge means that the person who is the holder of that badge has to be with them at that time. However, we can recover the badge for misuse, but ultimately that then is to detriment to the badge holder. So we need to obviously kind of make arrangements for that badge to be handed back to the actual badge holder. But there will be obviously a certain number of times that you might get away with that warning kind of thing. So it's just obviously we will keep on top of that. We get kind of obviously when we do these exercises, we hold kind of database of who's been investigated and the kind of terms of that. But that's generally what it is. It's if someone's been using the badge without the badge holder being present at that time.
Thank you.
Through you, I think we've also heard as well, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are occasions when sometimes the family forget to hand them back in after the disabled person who's deceased and continue to use them, which is an extension of using them when they're not there, but they're never going to be there in those circumstances. And part of the cross-check is against death certificates, etc. So, once that's established, then those can be brought in, but sometimes folk forget to hand them back.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely the case. Thanks, David. And the other aspect, probably just to provide some further assurance to committee, is the working arrangements, the tripartite working arrangements between the corporate fraud team, our health and social care colleagues in the council, and our ARA colleagues. It works very well. So ARA go out with their handheld device which lists the blue badges that have been matched to death records, and they particularly look for those badges being displayed on cars, and that's when the corporate fraud team will get the call, and corporate fraud team also do their proactive work around there. So the data sharing and the working together has been established since fairly early doors from setting up the corporate fraud team. So that's working well.
Thank you, David and Ailey. I'm going to go online of Councillor Canning and then Councillor Todd, and then we'll come back to Chambers to Councillor Watts. Councillor Canning.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the report, Ailey. It's just a question. I believe in December 2024, there was a COVID counter fraud commissioner appointed, and he has actually issued an interim report. I'm just wondering, I can't recall because it was before my time, we did disperse some funds around the COVID time. I'm just wondering what, if any, interaction there's been between the council and I think Mr. Hayhoe is the person in question.
If I can respond from our perspective in that, and I don't know if anybody else wants to pick it up in the panel, our particular interaction hasn't been with that individual, but we had very strong interaction with the head of fraud at Scottish Government, during COVID and post-pandemic. And members may recall that the word that was used by Scottish Government of the COVID grant controls in this council was impressive. And I was allowed to use that word and quote it in the reports that were brought to this committee. We were the only council in Scotland who got that badge of honour. And on the back of that, we have been used as a good practice example at various national events that we've attended. The level of fraud and error for COVID grants in this council was incredibly low. We were embedded, and our Chief Finance Officer was very proactive in embedding us in that whole process. And we applied our data analytics software. We identified a few minor frauds and errors. We were assisted by the corporate fraud team. We recovered, I think it was in the magnitude of 10 or 20,000. We recovered all of those funds because we did it quickly. The three Ayrshire councils worked together. In fact, our audit manager, Paul Davis, led on that. And it was 150 million in grants that was given out across the three Ayrshires. And we oversaw the fraud and error across the whole that whole population, the whole 150 million. And as I said, very, very low error level. There was a national data matching exercise carried out subsequently. I think it was 2 years after the event, which by that time, for other councils, when fraud was identified, it was too late to recover the money. And in a number of areas, there are ongoing issues there. So we struck while the iron was hot here. We worked very corporately, as we always do within this council, and we had a very good outcome in terms of the management of those COVID grants in this council. They went to the people who they should have gone to.
That's excellent news. Thank you, Ailey. Councillor Canning, you okay with that? Would you want back in?
Well, thanks, Ailey. We have had the conversation before, and I think that was very helpful, particularly for anyone watching this again, and the fact that it is in the public domain again. But I suppose my question was more aimed at understanding the quality and depth of the review by the Commissioner, because I suppose, particularly since we were very good, whether I would have kind of expected there to be some kind of correspondence with the Commissioner, but if that's not the case, that's very helpful. But thanks again, and I appreciate we did quite well on that, so thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Canning. Councillor Todd.
Thanks, Convener. John and Ailey, thank you very much for all the work you and your teams are doing. And I've got personal experience of a couple of individuals asking for COVID grants, and they were not back, so they came to me, as a lot of them went to other councillors. But the explanations I got back and why they didn't get them were absolutely hit the nail right in the head. So well done. I mean, the due diligence at the point of contract when the monies were being dispersed was very, very good, and the officers were never wrong. So well done for that. May I ask, and David maybe will be sick fed up with me going on about this one, but if a member of the public comes to a councillor or comes to your team or the council about cars that are lying with no road tax on them, no MOT, I absolutely understand the corporate side. It's anything that's to deal with East Ayrshire residents or officers. But what is the process and what are the steps? Because I've had people complaining to me that they've contacted the police, they've contacted the Ayrshire Roads Alliance, and it seems to swing to and fro whose responsibility it is. Now, if I was out on my motorcycle and I get stopped at the police, I'd be done if I wasn't insured, if I didn't have an MOT, and if I didn't have my road tax on. So what is the case with cars that are parked? And we've seen them all over North Ayrshire and East Ayrshire, all over the country, where vehicles are parked and they're not taxed, they're not MOT'd, they're not insured, and nothing seems to be happening. Could you give us a wee bit of advice with that? Thanks.
I'll take guidance from you, Chair, because obviously that goes beyond the actual report, but I know it's a matter of concern to various residents. My colleagues in Environmental Health wrote to 2 further members last night about the same matter, so I'm happy to take the opportunity to try and clarify. The powers of the Council through Environmental Health are to deal with abandoned vehicles. An abandoned vehicle is one that isn't taxed, isn't MOT'd and has been abandoned. If people own it, and it also needs to be in the public road, if it meets all those criteria, then we can remove vehicles where they're truly abandoned. If they're not taxed, then that's a matter for the DVLA, and we provide members with the website to provide to constituents who can check that. If they're simply not taxed, that's for the DVA. If they've been driven around without an MOT, that is for the police. And I'm not making excuses here, that is the legislation. And if so we can act on abandoned vehicles, the DVLA can act on untaxed vehicles. They're actually getting a bit more rigorous. You'll have maybe seen vehicles with the yellow boots on. That's where the DVLA take action. They don't remove them, they clamp them on the public road. So if it's abandoned, it's us. Abandoned isn't just not taxed or MOT'd, it has to be truly abandoned. No one is claiming ownership of it, so we are the authority of last resort. So if someone comes and complains about such a vehicle, we'll go and chap the doors, and if we can find the owner, then it's not abandoned, we will ask them to remove it. If it's being, as I said, if it's untaxed, it's DVLA. If it's been driven without an MOT, that's a road traffic offence that only the police can enforce, and we will remove the truly abandoned ones. There are a whole load of different scenarios, and officers are quite happy to act. We keep getting criticised for not acting, but we keep having to clarify, and I welcome this opportunity to clarify that we can only deal with truly abandoned vehicles. The fact that somebody points to it and says nobody's been near that for a week doesn't necessarily strike with the facts, because we don't always get the correct information, or B, it doesn't reflect the fact it's been abandoned. Somebody might have been on a holiday for that week. So I wish we had the powers that the public seem to think we have, but we, the council, on our own don't. We deal with abandoned vehicles, and the DVLA deal with untaxed vehicles, and the police will deal with anyone driving an MOT'd vehicle. And even then, we can only remove abandoned vehicles from public roads. So if it's on private ground, we have no powers. And if it's sitting in private ground, nor would the police, because it's not been driven without an MOT. And if it's got a SORN declaration and it's sitting in private ground without tax, then even the DVLA can't touch it. So that's the kind of headlines. If this needs further clarification for members, I'm happy to work with colleagues. I think we've actually just, in fact, we have actually just added this in. We previously provided a briefing note that was primarily aimed at MPs and MSPs for their information, and that started with powers around derelict and dangerous buildings and wasteland notices, etc. We have actually, in fact, it was the Vice Chair here at that suggestion, and a couple of weeks ago, we have now added in all of this information about abandoned vehicles, and we're just about to reissue that briefing. So the question is quite timely, and we'll reissue the briefing to all 32 councillors, setting all out what I've just summarised, Chair.
Thank you, David. And thank you, Councillor Todd, for the question. I think there's a portal on the DVLA, so you can report these things anonymously. You just put in the registration plate on the website, and if it's no tax, they'll investigate. So that's another route. Back to the papers. The only thing I could think of was looking at the Appendix 1. And I've noticed that the referrals you're getting have been going up and up and up for the last 5 years in a row. The number of referrals are going up, and you're doing a great job. You're investigating 100% of them, which is brilliant. Is there a worry that the referrals are going to keep going up, or would you think the number of referrals would plateau at some point and stop increasing?
What I would say is, I think, thank you, Chair, for the question. When it comes to these referrals, I think there's kind of natural fluctuation. Sometimes we've done campaigns where you get kind of, we've leafleted offices and put kind of livery on the sides of vehicles and stuff like that to kind of promote the corporate fraud service. So I think that can obviously increases things. We have obviously the kind of, as outlined in the appendix as well, we have the kind of National Fraud Awareness Week, where we kind of try and heighten things within the social media channels that we have open as well to kind of raise awareness. But for instance, we're seeing increases within East Ayrshire and comparatively within North Ayrshire. And I know it's not really necessary for this committee, but the comparative numbers have actually come down this year for the first year for a couple of years as well. So I have kind of spoken to the kind of the team manager just to kind of understand the kind of fluctuation slightly, and it can vary, and it can vary through time in terms of somebody might repeatedly refer the same kind of cases where they'll kind of highlight it where they feel that it's maybe not been looked at in fully, but I can assure you that these things are investigated fully, but it's possibly not the response that the individuals are expecting from the referral. So that would be kind of obviously counted multiple times as well. But no, that, as I say, I think it demonstrates a kind of high awareness of the corporate fraud team and the service that is provided. So, and I don't think it's a bad thing to have referrals that kind of gets them looked at, I suppose.
Thank you very much. We'll take one more question. Councillor Watts, you were wanting in on this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. You sort of, in a way, stole my thunder there because I was going to sort of ask the question on make a point on referrals. I remember back when I was Vice Chair in probably 2022, taking part in the Fraud and Awareness Week. So it's really good to see that the external referrals have gone up. It's not just coming from internal. So I just wanted to make that point that, to be fair, it is good to see an increase in referrals. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Watts. And we'll close this item on the agenda down. We'll go back to page 10 in the report, where the recommendations are in paragraph 2. They're mostly noting the assurance of council arrangements. We're meeting the obligations of SITFA, note the positive corporate fraud team annual and cumulative update, note the National Fraud Initiative, and agree the ongoing commitment to participate in the National Fraud Initiative. Otherwise, note the contents of the report. Are you happy with that, elected members? Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is, we're back to auditing team again. We're back to Aileen Mackay again for the next report.
Thank you, Chair. The last of our papers for today. So this is the audit plan for 25-26. It's coming up to you a wee bit later in the year. Normally we would aim to bring this up in April time, but the primary reason for this coming up a wee bit later is this is a huge transition year for internal audit across all councils in the UK. As laid out in the report, we are moving to a new set of professional standards, referred to as the Global Internal Audit Standards in the UK public sector. I have provided at paragraph 3 the links to the key documents, and some of them are more manageable, digestible than others. The document I would certainly recommend for committee, if you want to do some further background reading, is the document that I put the marker down for at the recent annual self-assessment, which is the SITFA, if you bear with me, my eyes are not great today, the SITFA 2024 Audit Committee Update, Issue 40, Oversight and Support of Internal Audit. That's actually just about the introduction of the new professional standards, and it explains in 2 or 3 pages what you as an audit committee should expect from me in terms of showing compliance with the new internal audit standards. That's also laid out in this report, but you can see it independently from that document, and I think it is a very useful guide from SITFA. The other links that you've got in that paragraph number 3 are probably for those maybe of a more insomniac nature. They are very long, very detailed, and not particularly easy to read. So the transition year is requiring us to use new language, slightly different approach for the audit plan, and slightly different approach to the methodology in our work. So if I highlight some of the key paragraphs, hopefully that will illustrate the journey that we're all now on. And the main purpose of the report, though, is as usual to approve the audit plan for the current financial year, which is laid out in the appendices. So at paragraph 4, I've laid out the SITFA requirements for councils, UK councils, in terms of the new global internal audit standards, and I'm not going to go over that in any detail. Again, that's picked up in the previous document that I highlighted. primary mandate of internal audit, paragraph 5, remains constant. We were made a statutory service in 2014 in Scotland, and that is the primary mandate for internal audit, and that requires councils to follow the professional standards for internal audit, which, as I said, are now the global internal audit standards. Paragraph 6, I've provided a very short description of the mandate, the charter, the strategy, and the mandate and the manual. Some of those words are established in the internal audit world. The charter is taking on a new, different life under the GS. And the positive thing is that we are not expected to be fully compliant with the GS right now. We are expected to be compliant or as more or less fully compliant, if not fully compliant, by the end of the financial year. So later on in the report, we have an action plan which indicates our journey towards that compliance in terms of the mandate, the charter, the strategy and the manual, and a number of those aspects will be brought back to committee for you to approve, because the professional standards require the audit committee to approve certain aspects of our operational practice. The assurance that's laid out in paragraphs 7 and 8 doesn't change. The assurance that you get from our work and from the wider work of the council remains constant. If I can touch on paragraph 9, refers to the 3 lines of defence model, which I think committee will now be very familiar with. And that highlights in a diagram at Appendix 1 the roles and responsibilities not only of internal audit but of all the other players in terms of the assurance framework in the council. And that 3 lines of defence model is also a constant feature of your risk management strategy and is referred to in the later paper today. There is there's a link in there to a document on the councillors' notice board, which again provides further information in that area, but we have brought further clarity in that to previous meetings as well. In terms of the main report from paragraph 10 onwards, we've talked about the primary mandate of internal audit, so that's basically what the law says. But in terms of primary role of internal audit, that's what our professional standards say. So that will continue to be the requirement for me to bring an annual opinion to this committee. And that annual opinion will give you assurance around governance, risk management and control in the usual way. It will be worded slightly differently, but it has the same impact at the end of the day, and that will inform the annual governance statement that you also approve annually, usually at the April G and S. So the overall impact of our work doesn't change, and that high level assurance that you get usually in the April of any financial, the end of any financial year, stays constant. The paragraphs 11 and 12, although the new standards don't specifically refer to an impairment statement, at the moment my choice is to maintain our annual impairment statement, where I state explicitly to committee that there's no inappropriate resource or scope limitations on the work of internal audit. And that statement was agreed with the council management team in their consideration of the draft report. So I think for me that remains really important. There's a similar form of words in the GS, and we just need to capture how we are going to report that going forward. The requirements for audit planning. So paragraph 13, we've laid out the requirements in the Global Internal Audit Standards for audit planning, which have underpinned the plan that's presented to you today. So it's called Domain 4, Standard 9.4, and that will give you an indication of how complex these new standards are. The fact it doesn't only have numerical standards, it has numerical domains within which there are a number of standards. So the key elements for planning are laid out there for committee's consideration, and I have given confirmation assurance to committee at paragraph 14, we have followed that advice in preparing this plan for your approval today. Paragraph 15 notes a definition of significant. The word significant is used in the Global Internal Audit Standards. That's a word that we've used before in terms of any significant changes to the plan. So we are proposing to continue to use the definition that any significant change that we would need to bring to committee would be where it involves 5% or more of audit days. And at the moment, that would be equivalent to 40 days in year. We've never ever had to invoke that protocol previously, although we do, as you know, we do make changes to the plan in line with any new risks emerging. But again, those changes are minimal and always reported to committee. But specifically, if anything goes above the 40 days, we have to bring it for committee approval before technically we're allowed to start work on it. So hopefully that won't need to be invoked in year. But we do need to state the protocol for this council around that area. Paragraph 16 is the action plan that I mentioned earlier. SIPFA anticipate that we will have an action plan to show committee when we are going to achieve the separate GIAS requirements, which are laid out there in numbers 1 to 6 in the table, cross-reference to the paragraphs within this report. There's an indication of whether they will be brought to committee. The first 3 items need to be brought to committee. We will advise you on the progress and the other 3 items. And the deadline set by SIPFA is end of this financial year. So why would I make it more onerous by making it earlier than that? So I'm proposing we make it the end of the financial year. It's a lot to do, but we have a detailed plan sitting below this within the team where we are already ticking off the milestones in achieving those overall objectives. So that's an expectation of SIPFA that we have that action plan, but I think it's hopefully useful for committee to see that we have a plan to achieve the full conformance with the new standards. I was going to touch on paragraphs 19 and 20. Again, this is an obligation in the standards for me to report our resourcing position to committee, and our impairment statement has already confirmed to you that I'm not currently overly concerned about our resourcing. I think anybody asked in the council would always like a bigger team, but the reality is we've got a budget and we have managed to have a number of people in the team who are delivering a service, and my view at the moment is we can deliver enough to meet the standards and give a quality of service to this council. Paragraph 20 indicates that at the point of writing this report, we had a vacant senior auditor post, so we had 4.66 FTE in post a few weeks ago, and that was 2.86 qualified accountants, 1 unqualified auditor, and 0.8 of a clerical assistant. That's the team. We also have a graduate intern who's doing a great job. So 5.66, I suppose you could argue we had there. We have offered the vacant senior auditor post to our preferred candidate this week. They have accepted. We anticipate a start date in a number of weeks following the usual employment checks. So I think the next report we bring up later on in the year to committee, hopefully we'll have that person in the room with us. So I was delighted. It's the best response we've had to recruitment for a number of years, and it's a person with an incredibly strong skill set who will be a very welcome addition to the team. So I'm glad I was able to bring that positive news to committee today. So the internal audit plan is referred to from paragraph 21, and it's set out in the appendices 2A to 4. Appendix 2A is the usual core systems, which is a 7-year rolling programme, the format of which was agreed with external audit over 10 years ago. This is our second 7-year programme, and that's on page 28. Appendix 2B is a new appendix, and that's on page 30. And that is our data analytics programme of work. It's a yes, it's a rolling programme of work over a number of years, and you can see the items that we propose to deliver in the current financial year. That's a new appendix. It will be updated year on year. That has been developed from the pilot work, you'll recall, that we've been carrying out over the last 2 years, and we originally badged it as data analytics and continuous auditing. We've dropped the continuous auditing badge because, quite frankly, it's not practical in a local authority which holds over 100 databases, very complex data that was never intended for data matching, quite frankly. It was intended to deliver services, quite rightly. So that's something that obviously the council's working on more widely in terms of digitisation, in terms of managing the data that we hold, and we'll benefit from that going forward. But at the moment, data analytics is our focus, and we're removing the badge continuous auditing, because it always implies, I think, we could press a button and provide an answer within minutes. That is never going to happen in the world of internal audit and public sector. We've then got appendix, apologies here, I'm struggling to, everything's looking a wee bit blurred now. Appendix, Paul, sorry, could you pick up? Appendix 3A in page 33, which is the brought forward jobs in the plan. So you'll see very small amounts allocated to most of those items. They're the jobs that we gave you an update on in April when we brought the annual report up to committee. So these are the residual days in order to get those jobs over the line. Appendix 3B are the new jobs for 25-26, and that follows the requirements of the GIAS, but also risk assessed for what's the best value for our days for this council. So it includes all the core systems, it includes cyber security, computer audit controls, and following the public pound, all sort of usual headings that you would expect to see in the plan. And we've listed the individual jobs as usual, the assignments in detail, so you can see very transparently what we are planning to do in year. And Appendix 4, as usual, is the follow-up jobs, and that's on page 38. And as members know, we follow up every recommendation we make as internal audit. We follow up through testing. So the items where we will be testing the historic recommendations, and usually historic means have been made in the last 12 months, we will be following up the implementation of those recommendations, and they're listed in paragraph 4. As you know, in this council, generally our follow-ups conclude in 100% scores, 100% implementation of recommendations, which I anticipate will continue to be the case. We have some more information at paragraph 24 and following the public pound, but again, that's laid out within Appendix 3B in terms of the specific jobs that we'll be doing around Ayrshire Roads Alliance, the East Ayrshire Leisure Trust, the Integration Joint Board and the Ayrshire Growth Deal, all of which we serve as an internal audit service for. And in addition to that, as part of our following the public pound work, and particularly influenced as well by the discussion at Cabinet on the 23rd of April upon approval of the service level agreement for the Leisure Trust. We're just going to be looking at the following the public pound arrangements in the council around monitoring that arrangement with the larger Leisure Trust going forward. And Chair, I think that was everything I wanted to say, so primarily, the report is to set the context for our new professional standards, but primarily to approve the internal audit plan, and that's reflected in recommendation number 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ailey, for presenting the report on your audit plan. Elected members, if you'll please my indulgence, we have 14 items on the agenda today. We're at only item 4. There's another meeting coming in after us later. So if you don't mind, I would rather move on and we don't take questions or comments on this paper just now. The appendices are there in much detail with 2A, 2B and 3A. There's loads of appendices. There's tons of information in this report and links to follow to the portal. If you need any specific questions or comments answered, you can contact the Chief Auditor, Ailey Mackay. As she often says to us, her door's always open and she welcomes visitors to her office if you want to pop in and have a chat about anything particular in auditing. Okay. The recommendations for this report are on page 28, paragraph 2, and we approve the annual audit plan as laid out in the various appendices. There's about 6 appendices. Note the core systems coverage laid out in the appendices, note the action plan as laid out paragraph 16, and otherwise note the contents of the report. Are we happy to do that and note all these contents? Thank you, elected members. That would end item 4 on the agenda. Thank you very much, Ailey. You're rushing off to another meeting, I believe. Is it an online thing? What is it you're going to? Can you say that again on the mic, please? And the best of luck when you're going to it.
Apologies. I'm blaming that on my side. We are going to the Scottish Local Authorities Chief Internal Auditors Group biennial conference, which has actually been held in person in Edinburgh, but I couldn't travel through because I'm a visual impairment at the moment. And my colleagues, we are joining it remotely. We're the only officers joining it remotely. So we have 3 staff attending. It's on today and tomorrow. It's a good event, it's a good networking event, and this council is contributing to the development of coaching and mentoring for the Chief Auditor Group. So our organisational development team are joining us this afternoon to create a structure for training and development for internal audit teams across Scotland.
Brilliant. Best of luck with your online conference, and best of luck to your new start to your team. Hope he settles in and enjoys the work. Thank you, Ailey. Item 5 on the agenda, we're going to now elected members, which is Galston Primary School, and it's one of Her Majesty's inspection reports. We are going to, who are we going to? Deputy Education Manager, Graham McGinn. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so the report is to present the findings of a report by Education Scotland HMIE following their inspection of Galston Primary School. And thanks to Shona Murphy, the head teacher of Galston Primary, for joining us this morning. The recommendations are set out at paragraph 2, and I would like to highlight just a small number of the background paragraphs for members. The report structure is fairly similar to previous inspection reports, and members will be familiar with the format of the report. In the aims of inspection, paragraphs 7 and 8, I'd like to highlight the 2 different models of inspection, full inspection model and short inspection model. The full inspection model focuses on 4 quality indicators, and the short inspection model focuses on 2 quality indicators. Paragraph 8 details how the quality indicators are evaluated in full inspection models and short inspection models. And underneath, in the last paragraph, Section 8 indicates how the quality indicators are evaluated using a 6-point scale ranging from unsatisfactory to excellent. Members, I'd like to move on to paragraph 13, and that's to highlight that in some inspections, HMIE are joined by colleagues from the Care Inspectorate. But given that the Early Childhood Centre was not involved in this inspection because it's a separate establishment, the Care Inspectorate were not involved in this inspection. Paragraph 25, members, moving on to East Ayrshire Primary School quality improvement visits. And paragraphs 25, 26 and 27 detail the steps that are taken during an East Ayrshire quality improvement visit. And paragraphs 28, 29 and 30 detail the quality improvement visit that was taking place at Galston Primary School, and that was in June 2023 by a team of officers involving 4 central education officers, 2 primary head teachers as part of our ongoing quality improvement work across schools. At paragraph 29, The visit identified the strengths of the school and provided advice and guidance on a small number of areas for improvement in relation to additional support needs procedures, increasing leadership opportunities of staff across the school, and collating evidence in a manageable and accessible way. The school progressed these areas, as can be demonstrated by the positive outcome of the HMIE inspection. So moving on, members, to paragraph 31, and that's the HMIE inspection itself. The school was inspected in the week beginning 3rd of March 2025, with inspectors using the short inspection model, so that was 2 quality indicators. This involved evaluating the performance using the quality indicators detailed in paragraph 8. Paragraph 32, members, details the evaluations for Galston Primary School, so that was 2.3, learning, teaching and assessment was good, and 3.2, raising attainment and achievement was very good. Paragraph 33 details the strengths that inspectors found in the school, and I'll just highlight a couple of them. So the school is led effectively by the head teacher and senior leaders. There's a relentless focus on achieving positive outcomes for all children, and all staff know children very well and effectively support them to achieve success. Other than that, the next bullet point highlights the highly relevant professional learning that takes place, particularly in digital technology and play pedagogy. And also the final bullet point in that paragraph, senior leaders' robust approach to tracking and monitoring children's progress. Paragraph 34 highlights areas for continued improvement, and that word continued is important because these aren't new to the school, to continue to support children to be independent in their learning and to continue to help children to better understand the skills that they're developing for learning, life and work. Interestingly, members, paragraph 35, inspectors identified practice that's worth sharing more widely, and that was in relation to the use of pupil equity funding, particularly in terms of how senior leaders and staff track the progress of interventions and the impact on cohorts and groups. That can be reflected in the very good evaluation in raising attainment and achievement. Staff work very well with partners to provide a range of interventions, and also the work around about the learning hub and courtyard to support a few children well who require a quiet, calm space at the start of a day or a break from learning to allow them then to re-engage in learning or to manage emotions. So members, moving on to the response to the inspection, paragraph 37. HMIE inspectors reported that they are confident that the school has capacity to continue to improve and will make no further visits in connection with this inspection. That's consistent with the findings from the East Ayrshire quality improvement visit. Paragraph 38, the school will build on the strengths and address the areas for continued improvement via ongoing school improvement activity. And paragraph 39, as part of our ongoing commitment to improvement within the education service, head teachers are being signposted to Shona Murphy, the head teacher of Galston Primary School, to support them as they are notified of inspection and where similar school improvement priorities are being progressed. So members, I hope you agree it's a very positive outcome, inspection at Galston Primary School. Lots to celebrate within this report, and Shona and I are happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Graham. I think what probably we'll do now is go to Shona Murphy, the head teacher, and just tell us a wee bit about your school and the work you've been doing and how the inspection experience was for you. And congratulations on getting a very good school report. Learning, teaching, assessment good, raising attainment and achievement very good. So well done to you and your staff. Shona.
Morning, everybody. Thank you very much for that. I think the experience of inspection, the run up to the experience, the actual inspection is very hard going. I think everybody understands. Just trying to get everything pulled together and prepare for it, and everybody's really anxious about it. So we're all delighted that we've had a positive report from the work that's been done, and it's a journey that's probably taken. I've been at school for 12 years now, so it's been something that we've built up to, and the things have changed as we've gone on through. What's expected from the curriculum has changed, so all of that goes together to get this positive report just now. I'm very lucky. I have a very good staff team, very, very committed staff team, and without that whole team approach, we wouldn't have an outcome like this. So I have myself, a deputy head teacher and 2 principal teachers. And one of the things that we've used, we did a conscious decision when PEF funding came out at the very beginning, was to put the majority of that money goes to a 0.1, a full-time teaching member of staff, which complements our core staffing, but that allows the principal teachers to have a very hands-on approach in different stages. So we have the 4 of us work very closely together. So although they're principal teachers, they work very closely as part of the senior management team. So that's what they're talking about there, about the strong leadership there. We have a very mixed group of children and families within Galston. We have some children who are living in poverty and very difficult conditions, right up to children who have, in comparison, very privileged backgrounds and a lot of support. We have a very good supportive parent group and parent council that works closely with us. And we're slowly trying to sort of build the relationships and the confidence of parents and families that maybe are more reluctant to come into school. And that's what a lot of the PEF money has actually been spent on as well, to try and build these relationships. And we worked with Bernardo's coming in and working with parents, the home link worker, Nest from CAMS has come in, and our principal teacher, one of them in particular, has been coordinating these approaches and working with parents and taking forward things that other agencies have started and tried to keep that going. So
Thank you very much, Shauna. Put your mic off, please, and we'll take any questions from around Councillor Sangster and then Councillor Cogley.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Well done. Well done to you and your staff. It's a really good report. I'm just wanting a wee bit more information around, because the Learning Hub and Courtyard, I love that idea. I do. I genuinely love it. I think it sounds amazing. So are you able to just give us a wee bit more information on that and maybe give us some examples of how it works and that sort of thing? Because it sounds really exciting to me, and it almost sounds like something that probably every school should have, you know? Thank you.
We're lucky because of the actual physical building that we have. So we have opening bases, and we've got 4 bases within the school. So there's 4 classrooms within each base, and it can be quite noisy. It's really positive. There's lots of really good things about it. The teachers work across these bases, but we found that some of the children who struggle more with that noise and that they need a quieter space. And because of the way the building's set out, there is a courtyard which is completely enclosed. And when I arrived at school, it had drains and things underneath it. And I think originally it was supposed to be vegetable gardens. It was all very overgrown. And we used the PEF money to basically redo that area, and we put down, so there's a big area of it is sand, and we've got a sand pit. We've got a kind of back area where children have got access to water, and we've got seating areas. There is a kind of growing part of there for flowers, and there's a kind of wild area in there as well. So it's not a huge area, but it's very contained, and it can be very quiet. And some of the children that we find that just can't cope with the wider playground where it's really busy, and you've got 300 children all running about, and some are very active and chasing each other through the middle of a game. They just couldn't cope with that. So the courtyard is somewhere that there is a door that goes out into the playground, and we have to have a list of children that can come into the courtyard, or it would just be like the playground. But they can come in and out as they please. So they can come through from the playground into the courtyard at break times and lunch times. And if they decide, if it's a nice day and they want to go out and play with other friends in the playground, they go. But there is a member of staff. So one of my principal teachers, they do a rota. So at playtime and lunchtime, they are in the courtyard. And it also means that they can model, so children that find it really difficult to socialise with others, to maybe socialise appropriately with others, they can model that behaviour to them. And we've also got children from primary 1 to primary 7, so some of our older children that are in there that maybe have got ASD, they are really good at working with some of the younger children and showing them how to play. So they all learn from each other. And the hub, we have 2 closed classrooms within Galston Primary. The rest are all the open bases. And one of them is a classroom and the other one is the hub. And it's the same principle really as the courtyard. Some children in that hub, that it's not a timetable, they're in there every day, it's as they need it. So we have boost groups, so literacy groups or numeracy groups that run in there. We have a soft start in the morning, so some children as they come in the morning, go in there for 5-10 minutes, get a check-in before they go to class. We have parent groups running in there. And they come in for a chat and a coffee and a biscuit, and then we talk about behaviour strategies that have been used at home. So there's a wide variety of things it's used for, but the children access it as they need it.
Wow, that's amazing. Linda, Joe, every school should have a courtyard and a hub. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sangster, for the question, and Shona for the reply. Councillor Cogley.
Shona, thank you very much. And as one of the local elected members, it's always a great pleasure to come to your school. It really is. And I think paragraph 39 just sums it up. So well done. Well done to you and the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cogley. Any other questions or comments? Linda, would you want to come in, comment at all?
Thanks so much, Chair. I think, once again, and it's a shame leadership wasn't evaluated, because 1.3 I think here would have been incredibly strong. Obviously members know in the long model you get the 4 QIs, and Shona's leadership, I'm glad to say, did shine through on this report, but I do feel you were hard done by Shona with it being a short model, not a long model. The school maybe don't feel that, because that means they're in for a week rather than a couple of days, but certainly from my perspective, I think it would have come through incredibly strongly in terms of how Shona has really transformed the school. But I think, again, Chair, I'd really like to point out that great connection that we're continuing to find through our education reports that are coming through just now between what we see in our learning visits, so our internal systems for quality assurance, and what we're seeing out there when the external partners come to town in terms of that piece. But no, really from me, it's just a huge thanks to Moan team and to Shona's team out there in Galston doing a great job.
No other questions? Nothing online? Right, I think we'll leave it at that. Well, thank you very much for attending, Shona. And is this a member of your staff beside you? No? Sorry. My mistake. Right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and we'll let you quietly sneak out. Thank you for coming, and well done on the Galston Primary School report.
Chair, through you, I'm going to hand to Audrey Hill, who's sat beside Shona. Audrey is Janie Allen's interim replacement at this point in time as Early Years Strategic Education Manager. So I'll pass to Audrey for this report on the inspections at the early years level.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. This annual retrospective report sets out the findings of published care inspectorate reports for 7 early childhood centres and 5 funded providers during the period 1st of April 2024 to the 31st of March 2025. The report also provides details of 2 reports within the 12 early year settings, which were joint inspections between Care Inspectorate and His Majesty's Inspectorate of Education, HMIE. Given it's an annual and therefore very detailed report, I don't intend to go through every section in detail, but will highlight the statutory duties and main headlines. The 9 recommendations which are set out in paragraph 2 are all for noting. Paragraphs 3 to 9 provide the background to inspections, with paragraphs 11 and 12 noting the current position and progress regarding shared inspections, and 2 early childhood centres within East Ayrshire who very bravely volunteered to be part of the pilot using the draft framework. Feedback from one of the pilot inspections was recently shared with colleagues at the Early Years Heads meeting in April, and thanks must go to Gillian McCracken, Head Teacher of New Mills Primary and Early Childhood Centre, for this very valuable input. Following evaluation of the pilot, the final version of the shared inspection framework is expected to be published later this year in September. Inspectors use the current quality framework for daycare of children, childminding and school-aged childcare to provide independent assurance about the quality of care, play and learning. Paragraphs 13 to 17 set out the key questions and definitions of evaluations and grades from the quality framework. The 4 key questions are: how good is our care and learning, how good is our setting, how good is our leadership, and how good is our staff team. The core quality indicators under the 4 questions and how these evaluations are arrived at during the inspection year are noted in the report, are set out in paragraph 15 and 16. The evaluation given to the quality indicator is automatically the evaluation for the key question overall. Therefore, where more than one quality indicator per key question is assessed, the overall evaluation for the key question will be the lowest evaluation and grade of the quality indicator for that specific key question. Grades are awarded for each key question on a scale of 1 to 6, where 1 is unsatisfactory and 6 is excellent. The Care Inspectorate can also make recommendations or stipulate requirements as part of the inspection, as set out in paragraphs 18 to 28. A recommendation or area for improvement is a statement which sets out actions that a provider should take to improve or develop the quality of the service, but where failure to do so would not directly result in enforcement action. A requirement is a statement which sets out what a service must do to improve outcomes for people who use services and must be linked to a breach in the Public Services Reform Act 2010, its regulations as per the Social Care and Social Work Improvement Scotland Regulations 2011, or orders made under the Act, or a condition of registration. All requirements are enforceable in law. Paragraphs 29 to 32 highlight the national standard for funded early learning and childcare, which all local authority, private and voluntary sector providers, including childminders, must meet if they are to provide funded early learning and childcare places. All settings providing these places need to meet specific criteria as part of the national standard and achieve evaluations of good or better in Care Inspectorate inspections. When settings, including childminders, drop below the required quality criteria as set out in the national standard, they will be given a fair service improvement period in which to address this before their service provider status is removed. For example, where a setting including childminders fall below the quality evaluation of good, they will be assessed again within 6 to 12 months. The focus of the inspection will be on aspects of the service which require to improve. Paragraphs 33 to 40 describes the local authority role as the primary guarantor of quality. Local authorities must assess and monitor compliance of all funded providers and childminders against the national standard, which they all need to meet to deliver funded places. The local authority, in its role as primary guarantor of quality, needs to be clear about its expectations, including the criteria within the national standard that are not being met, and how the service can improve this to ensure that children receive high quality early learning and childcare. Settings in this position may need enhanced support before they are inspected. The evaluations of the quality indicators and the summary of the key messages for each of the 12 settings inspected are set out in pages 8 to 30 of this report, with links provided to the full individual reports on the Care Inspectorate website. Appendix 1 sets out the collated evaluations for each setting. So in summary, 7 of the 12 settings inspected achieved grades of good or better at inspection. Within the remaining 5 settings, 1 funded provider was subject to a further 12-month service improvement period. 1 funded provider was subject to a 12-month service improvement period. 1 funded provider did not meet the national standard on 2 quality indicators. It should be noted that this business, namely Avenue Childcare Services, ceased trading on the 30th of April 2025. one early childhood centre fell below the threshold on one quality indicator, and one early childhood centre fell below the threshold on 2 quality indicators. Given that this is a retrospective report, and as you would expect, a significant package of targeted support has already been put in place to address any identified requirements or actions and build capacity for sustained improvement. That concludes the report, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Audrey, for presenting that report. The care inspectorate inspections of ECCs and funded providers. Before I open it to a room to take questions, I've omitted on the last item of the agenda the recommendations, which are on page 41, paragraph 2. Elected members, that was the note the publication of the inspection report for Galston Primary, note the strengths areas for further improvement. We congratulate the children and young people and all the staff at Galston Primary, note the next steps, and otherwise note the contents of the report. Are we happy with that, elected members? Thank you very much. I'll now open it to the room, and again, thank you, Audrey, for presenting your report, and we'll take any questions. Councillor Lennox online, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just in regards to page 48, paragraph 2, section 3, I note there that Burns Bairns was subject to further inspection from June last year. My understanding is that they have recently gone and they've recently had another review from the care inspectorate. Just wondering if, appreciate it's early days, but would do we have any concerns at this stage that might need to continue?
Through you, Chair. Yes, so I can obviously provide a really detailed account in terms of the support package that we've given them, which would be a development officer and teacher support through our TAP team. And answering your question, they did have a very recent re-inspection, which was last week. That report will be embargoed until its official publication date. What I can tell you is I'll look forward to bringing the outcome of that report back, hopefully next year, if it's me or whoever it is. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I kind of get the tone there, so thanks for that.
Thank you, Audrey. Sounds quite positive. Thank you, Councillor Lennox, for the question. Councillor Sangster.
Yeah, it's probably quite a similar question around Burns Bairns, but because obviously they've had a couple of times where they've not met standards. Just in general, how many times does somewhere like this get a chance to improve? Because it would seem to me that if you're given a chance to improve and then you don't, and then have to be inspected again as a result, you know, how many chances do these establishments get in terms of, you know, improving? But, you know.
Back to you, Audrey. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, obviously the responsibility for that lies with the local authority, and there's guidance round about it, and clearly it is a very rigorous inspection process that we have in early years. We're the most rigorously inspected in terms of the whole education sector, so you would expect that the standards are high. So we would always have to take advice on that in terms of if we got into that period. Thankfully, thus far, we haven't. But just to reassure you that as well as the external scrutiny of it, we would be in there very quickly in terms of our own support. So we would have our own intelligence around our audits and re-audits and support. But the local authority role is to challenge, but it's also to support. So certainly there would be a process in terms of they would be provided with you know, an official letter of they're in a service improvement period, and obviously a further service improvement period. But to reassure you, that just wouldn't continue, because obviously it's so important to us that the quality of what we're providing for our youngest children is of the best quality that it can be. Sometimes also in the Care Inspectorate reports, what you'll find is, and I explained this in the commentary, that it might not be the full indicator that didn't meet the national standard, it might be part of it. So it goes with the lowest, you know, overall. But just to reassure you that we've got very tight checks and balances in that, and I can understand why you'd be asking that question, but it wouldn't be allowed, you know, to continue because children are using a service and we need that to be of, you know, the best quality it can be, and obviously the external scrutiny would support that as well. Does that answer your question, I hope?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much. Is it okay, Chair, if I ask another question? Is that all right?
Certainly, yeah.
Just page 68 around the flexible childcare services. Just a big red flag for me is about the health and safety compromised by ineffective recording and insufficient staff knowledge and safe administration of medication. That kind of frightens me a wee bit. So what kind of reassurances can you offer that appropriate training is in these establishments, that the mistakes are not going to happen, that a child not, you know, receiving wrong medication or not receiving medication, or, you know, it not being given effectively, because that is a real concern. So I'm just looking for some reassurances around that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sangster. Back to you, Audrey.
To you, Chair. So the update in terms of FCSS is that we're continuing support from our development officer, and there's regular visits planned over the coming months. The medication is, you know, the top priority of what we would be addressing, because that's basic health and safety. So that would come, you know, as a main issue in terms of things being put in place if they're not already, in terms of what's in the report, but also our auditing of that to make sure that, you know, it's not just one time that we're checking to make sure that's okay, we're going back, but also, more importantly, that we would be building capacity within that service to make sure that they're carrying out their own checks and balances, because there just isn't any wiggle room around that area, which you would expect. We've also got teacher input in there. They've had 2 days per week, but we're increasing that to a full-time teacher. So resource-wise, that's quite a lot in terms of what we're providing there. And we're providing overall quite significant support to them. But also in terms of your question about the medication, we're monitoring that situation very closely, as you would expect.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's reassuring to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. These are a mixture of council providers and private providers. Can you give us a number of how many ECC providers we have that are doing this rolling inspection programme?
So currently we've got 36 of our own early childhood centres, and we've got 7 funded providers. And just to give you a bit of context, in terms of the national standard overall, you know, this is obviously a snapshot in terms of the year that's passed, that it's retrospective, but 38 out of our 43 settings, which is the mixture of our own early childhood centres and funded providers, are currently meeting or exceeding the national standard. So it's a snapshot of the year that's went, but in whole, you know, that's the number that we have. And certainly if there are any recommendations or actions, that's exactly where our targeted support would be. It would be prioritised for that as a matter of urgency. And there would be regular feedback from the team to the service managers and also myself if there was anything, you know, not being complied with, that either that would be a dialogue right away with us or a dialogue back to the Care Inspectorate, because it's a regulated service, so it wouldn't be left to any chance.
Thank you, Audrey. And is this an annual report? So next year we'll probably see maybe a dozen other different ones will be coming up. Right, I see. Thank you very much. There's no other questions? Elected members? None online. Okay, we'll go back to the recommendations, page 48. I'm not going to read these out. There's 9 paragraphs of recommendations. And I know elected members have had their papers for a couple of days and you've managed to read through all 300 pages of the reports in front of us today, and you know every detail of all these reports, so I don't need to be repeating all your recommendations. Happy to take it as read, members, that we're not in all your recommendations. Thank you. And we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is duty of candour, registered daycare of children's services and housing support services. It's a joint report. It's Lisa Punton and Audrey Hill again. Who's going first? We're going to Lisa Punton. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The purpose of the report is to remit to the committee the annual reports and incidents which meet the duty of candour for registered daycare of children's services and housing support services for the period the 1st of April 2024 to the 31st of March 2025. Recommendations are set out at paragraph 2 of the report, Chair. Paragraphs 3 to 9 set out the background in relation to the duty of candour, the organisational duty of candour provisions of the Health, Tobacco, Nicotine, etc. and Care Scotland Act 2016 and the Duty of Candour Procedures Scotland Regulations 2018 set out the procedure that organisations providing health services, care services and social work services in Scotland are required by law to follow when there has been an unintended or unexpected incident that results in death, a permanent lessening of bodily, sensory, motor, physiologic or intellectual functions or harm not being severe harm. Members will note that the duty applies to all registered health, social work and care services with the exclusion of childminders to be open and honest with patients or service users or their families when an unexpected incident of the nature set out in paragraph 3 occurs. However, the duty will only apply when the organisation is notified by a healthcare professional that in the professional's reasonable opinion such an incident has occurred. The duty does not apply where the incident was minor in nature or a near miss. However, it is good practice to learn from all incidents that occur. Every year, the Care Inspectorate asks all registered services to complete an annual return which provides the Care Inspectorate with important information that helps inform it to plan and carry out inspections. The annual report also includes a question asking registered services if they have published a duty of candour report, and there is a question included in the Care Inspectorate notification e-forms which asks organisations if they have been notified of an incident which has triggered the duty of candour. Even if there are no incidents to which the duty applies, a short annual report is still required, as it must contain information about staff training and the duty of candour. This allows the Care Inspectorate to collect data on how the duty is being implemented and to help embed awareness. The Care Inspectorate can ask to review services' duty of candour reports or examine them as part of their overall scrutiny of care services. Paragraphs 10 to 13 set out the purpose and content of the duty of candour report and makes recommendations for the layout and structure of the report. The primary purposes of the report are directed at supporting learning rather than merely collecting quantitative information, to provide public assurance that the duty of candour is being embedded within the services to which it applies, to encourage responsible persons to self-reflect on how the duty has been embedded and how the quality of operation can be continually improved, contribute to the Care Inspectorate, Healthcare Improvement Scotland and the Scottish Government's wide evidence base about the provision of social care and health services. Annual reports for daycare of children's services and housing support services are attached to Appendices 1 and 2, and members will note that there are no reportable incidents. Paragraphs 14 to 22 sets out any implications in connection with the report, and I would draw members' attention to paragraph 20 in relation to risk implications and that failure to comply with the statutory duties which require organisations to carry out their duty of candour may result in prosecution and damage to the reputation of the organisation. In conclusion, this is a very positive report which sets out the Council's compliance with the duty of candour in relation to housing support services and daycare of children's services, with no incidents recorded which meet the threshold for reporting under the duty of candour. That concludes the report, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Duty of candour. Very strange paper. There's nothing has been no incidents of duty of candour. So it's the type of incidents that fall under duty of candour is if someone has died, if someone is permanently injured, increase of harm, and there's no incidents have happened. But the reassurance is there that if an incident like this happened, you have the staff who are properly trained to address that.
Yes, Chair, that's correct.
If there are any comments in the room, any questions? But I'm really glad we haven't had any serious incidents of this nature that staff have had to deal with. That would be sad if that had happened. Recommendations for this one, elected members, are on page 83, paragraph 2. If you're happy to accept these, it's note the duty of candour applies to registered daycare of children's services and housing support. Note there are no incidents to which the duty applies this time. Short annual report is still required. Note the annual reports in relation to daycare services, housing support services, and its appendices 1 and 2, and otherwise note the contents of the report. Elected members, happy with that? Note the contents of the report. Thank you very much for presenting the report, Lisa and Audrey. I think you compiled the report. No, that was a joint effort. Thank you very much. Well done. We'll move on. That's item 5, 6, 7. We're now on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the progress report on East Ayrshire Violence Against Women Partnership. For this report, we go to Diane Langley, who is the lead officer for Violence Against Women Partnership. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you and good morning. So I'm here today to present the Violence Against Women annual report from 2024 to 25. It's for consideration and noting. And the annual report details the level of activity that has taken place in East Ayrshire across all partners and stakeholders. You'll note the report is quite big. We are working on a digestible brief version which has been developed for practitioners and the women that we serve, and that will be due to be ready in June 2025. So any time now it's due back from graphics. So within the actual internal page numbering of the report, page 1, we Violence Against Women Partnership is the local delivery mechanism for the Scotland's national Equally Safe strategy, which is to end and prevent violence against women and girls. Appendix 2 or Appendix 1 to the report shows how East Ayrshire Violence Against Women Partnership is doing on a national basis. It benchmarks us against reports us against nationally, and we do work. We are quite favourably doing quite well there in terms of benchmarking. Violence against women continues to be really prevalent within society, harmful to women and children, also by default quite harmful to men. So we've been working very hard to complete the actions that are set out in the 2021 to 24 annual report, annual plan, strategic plan, and now we're currently developing the 2024 to 27 plan. We were granted a transitional year throughout 2024 to develop the current plan, which is now ready and is due to be published anytime. We're essentially looking for it to be returned from graphics. So that will be within pages 3 and 4 of the report. Our new strategic plan has 4 priorities. One is to conduct a strategic needs assessment, which I'm currently working on with partners. Secondly, to develop a structure for women and girls with lived experience to be able to influence, monitor and evaluate the work of the Violence Against Women Partnership. The third is cultural change in key community settings and key areas, being working with men and boys, working with young people, working with our workforce. And we do have an action to work with the nighttime economy. And then our 4th priority is developing and delivering sustainable, trauma-informed, specialist and universal services. So while the plan has been approved and is just due to be published, we have already been working quite diligently on taking forward many of the actions in the plan. It captures the public protection activity and the activity in the specialist violence against women sector, which support women and children affected by violence. One key area for work for the Violence Against Women Partnership going forward is to strengthen partnership working. across the public protection sector as required by the Equally Safe strategy. And one example of that is the public protection team is currently working on a test for change around communication and engagement, really about strengthening our messages for the community, for stakeholders, for our workforce, in terms of how all the public protection agendas overlap and intertwine, and that violence against women and girls is actually a foundation and cornerstone of much of the public protection activity. Also within the report, I would bring to your attention a focus on the public health approach to ending and eradicating violence. This is a key theme of the Equally Safe strategy, and it's worth noting that within East Ayrshire, we have 3 recognised public health approaches to ending violence against women and girls. If we see gender inequality as the root cause of violence against women and girls, then we need to address that in its first effort. You know, it's address it in the first sense. So one of the public health approaches that we have in East Ayrshire to do that is Equally Safe at Work. This is working on gender equality, closing the gender pay gap, ensuring HR policies are gender and gender-based violence sensitive, and you can see a description of that on pages 10 and 11 of the report. This has taken place within East Ayrshire Council, where we've already achieved bronze status and are working towards silver status. There is a similar process taking place within NHS Ayrshire and Arran, both of which are the 2 of the largest employers within East Ayrshire. Going on to page 29, a second public health approach to ending violence is Equally Safe in Practice. This is a whole workforce approach, and East Ayrshire Council and all of the partners are currently working towards this. There are 3 modules: Together for Gender Equality, Understanding Domestic Abuse, and Understanding Sexual Violence. They do take some time to complete, but once people have completed them, they will have quite a thorough entry-level knowledge of violence against women and girls and how to address it. We kindly ask that elected members also complete Equally Safe in Practice, and that you promote it in the work that you do across the council. Equally Safe in Practice is within the service improvement plans of most of our services, and there's a positive comms, hopefully a positive comms campaign, which you'll see when you open your computer at the moment. We have the screensaver Equally Safe in Practice. Within page 12 of the report, we also speak to Equally Safe at Schools. That's our 3rd public health approach, and all schools within Scotland have to be registered for the ESAS programme by March 2026. So there's currently work underway to achieve that at the moment. Moving on through the report, there's a section around the specialist services who deliver the trauma-informed specialist work, and they do so in very difficult circumstances. And the report evidences and shows that when women and girls and children engage with FOS services, their safety and feelings of well-being increase. So the work of our specialist services, East Ayrshire Women's Aid, Assist, Victim Support, Break the Silence, and Star Centre Ayrshire Rape Crisis are really, really valuable in this work. The report also denotes the work of all of our partners, including police, fire and rescue, and internal partners in pages 15 to 18. And finally, we have detailed the work of the 16 days campaign during 16 Days of Action or Activism, which takes place in November and December, and it's there to raise awareness of violence against women and to take action to address it. We also within East Ayrshire have a very comprehensive learning and development programme that's delivered on a partnership basis through East Ayrshire Council, NHS and our specialist FOS services, and we would also encourage people to attend as much of that training as possible. It's a really good offer, and it's not often, it's not really rivalled anywhere else in terms of what we're able to provide. Hopefully that will give you an overview of the work that's taken place. It is comprehensive. There's lots of partners involved in this work, and hopefully the report will give you some insights as to what we're trying to achieve and what we've been successful in doing so far. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Diane, for presenting that report. It's a big report. It's a huge topic, huge subject. I can see on page 109 that the total number of women who are fleeing domestic violence. So you're dealing with between 70 and 80 women every year who are fleeing domestic violence, and roughly half of them, according to your table, also have children with them fleeing domestic violence. It's really sad, and I thank you and all your teams and all the various partners for all the hard work they're doing, trying to help these people. It's brilliant work. Thank you. Going back in.
Really just to, I suppose, advise, it's no surprise, we talk about it every year, that the rates of the numbers of women and children who experience violence, again, male violence is increasing. We know our sexual violence rates are increasing in East Ayrshire, and the number of women who are exposed to domestic abuse and other forms of violence against women are increasing. We are, as I say, undertaking a strategic needs assessment in order to better understand what violence against women looks like specifically in East Ayrshire. There are data gaps in that, but that is reflected on a national basis as well. So it is a big piece of work, and I'm sure it won't end just when that first strategic needs assessment is completed. I'm sure it will continue. But again, the work of our specialist law services and supporting women is really valuable.
I think as well, just for the public, try to understand, and hopefully some members of the public actually watch these videos when they go on YouTube. The amount of partnership working, the amount of different organisations, you've got representatives from Police Scotland, Scottish Fire and Rescue, NHS, Ayrshire and Nairn, the Health and Social Care Partnership, the Council for Voluntary Organisations, Community Justice Ayrshire, Her Majesty's Prison in Kilmarnock, East Ayrshire Women's Aid, Bernardo's, Break the Silence, Assist, Victim Support, the Star Centre, Recovery Enterprises, East Ayrshire Council, of course, and services from education, housing, vibrant communities, early years and community safety services. The amount of partnership working that your team are doing and are involved in right in the centre of that is amazing. So well done to each and every one of you. I'll open it up to the room for anyone who has any questions or comments on this. Councillor Sangster.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, just to expand on what you were saying there about the partnership working. It does look like in pages 127 to kind of 130, it looks like a lot of these women are really getting, a lot of support from, these services. How confident are you that women out there know about things like East Ayrshire Women's Aid, the Star Centre, Break the Silence? Are you confident that it's well known that these services are available? Because, my fear is that there probably is still some women who are feeling very alone and don't know where to turn. So I'm just wondering how confident you are about getting that kind of information out there to people that really need it.
Thank you for the question. So yes, we're confident that the services are well known within East Ayrshire, both through our own council website and through the social media campaigns and the front-facing websites of our FOS services. There's a lot of work goes into them, particularly you see the Star Centre and East Ayrshire Women's Aid are very active on social media and also do outreach. I suppose it's like what we are aware of in this sector is that we could improve messages. Many and women with lived experience have told us this, workforce have told us this in terms of our consultation, and that's part of the strategic plan. We do have a section around improving communication. What we've heard back from women with lived experience is we need to be really specific about what abuse is. What coercive control is, make that really clear for people. Women have reported back to us that it's only really after seeing a very clear public communication campaign that they've realised that they have been in an abusive relationship. So part of our work going forward is to do that locally in East Ayrshire. We do have that very firmly in our sights. We could always improve in getting the message out, and many women will not report immediately or initially, and it'll take a lot of time and often effort to get women to disclose. So we really do need to skill up the staff within not just specialist services, but within mainstream services who will come into contact with women. Initially, that be education, social work, housing. That's partly why we're taking forward the public health approach of equally safe in practice. And that's partly why we're trying to encourage that all of our staff be trained in recognising domestic abuse and sexual violence, so that should they come across any women within their routine service, within their routine delivery of service, that they are able to offer an understanding approach should that become to their attention. So it's about skilling up the whole workforce and also our community in terms of public messages. We can do better, but we are confident that those services are well known.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, Councillor Sangster? Thank you. And I think isolation, living in fear, it's the courage they need to come forward, and the bravery, and you and your staff will be encouraging them to take those steps. I'm going to go online because Councillor Hogg has a question online. Thank you, Councillor Hogg.
Thanks, Chair. It's not so much a question, it's working in primary care. It is a recognition of the improvement that we see in communication now to help people with domestic violence, etc. The access to lots of different services has improved tenfold over the past 5 to 10 years. There's no doubt about that. And information provision now is excellent as well. There are lots of different avenues as practitioners we can now access to support and help people who may be a victim of abuse of certain kinds. My main concern now is there going to be an increase in gender-based violence after our Supreme Court hearing recently, because there's not a lot of people have an understanding of the gender basis. It seems quite muddy, but that would be my only concern. But overall, what's been happening in the past few years has really come on leaps and bounds, and all testament to the type of work that's been undertaken here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. Members, if there's no other questions, or did you want to come back and comment? No? Okay. The recommendations are on page 93. Paragraph 4, the recommendations. Note the activity undertaken by the Violence Against Women Partnership. Consider and comment on the progress report, which we have done, and otherwise note the contents of the report. Are you happy with these recommendations, elected members? Thank you. I think what we'll do is we'll take one more item on the agenda, item 9, and then I think we should have a wee break because we've been going now for a couple of hours nearly. The next item is Risk Management Strategy 24-25 Progress Update, and that one's with Ian Tuff. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, members. Just a short introductory comments from myself. Now I'll pass on to my colleague Emma, who is the lead for the Council's risk management arrangements. So this presents the first update to the strategic risk management strategy. It was approved by Governance and Scrutiny just over a year ago, back in April last year. So part of that includes an improvement action plan, and really the intention today and the purpose of this report is to update members on progress against that, and also to highlight a couple of main areas of progress for us in other respects as well, Chair. So with those introductory comments, I'll pass on to Emma. Thank you.
Morning, members. As Ian's just stated, so at paragraph 1, the report, there's a purpose of report is covered. So it's to provide a positive progress update on risk management activity and performance against the strategy, which was approved at GNS on the 18th of April 2024. Bit of background is provided at paragraph 3 and 4. So this strategy set out the Council's strategic direction for the management of risk at both corporate and service level. Perhaps the most important part of this report is at paragraphs 5 and 6, so which is the strategic risk improvement plan. So this sets out actions for the improvement of risk management activities for 24 and 25. It was agreed within this strategy that this would be updated annually to ensure good progress was being made. So a progress update for 25, as well as a revised improvement plan for 25-26, is attached at Appendix 1 of this report. It is noted that the format of this improvement plan has been altered slightly, so as to include long-standing items. So these are actions which will be carried out on an ongoing basis and will rarely fall off, as they're a testament to good practice. Actions which have been added for the coming year are labelled as new, with target dates attached to each. So these new actions include target risk assessments, risk appetite visualisation through infographics, system audit to prevent duplication, risk maturity assessment and review of mitigations working closely with internal audit, and training workshops delivered with organisational development to promote risk awareness. At paragraphs 7 and 8, risk appetite statements are covered, and these are attached again at Appendix 2. These have been revised off of the back of feedback from both the Strategic Risk Officers Group and Council Management Team. It is noted that these statements have been reframed in a more forward-looking and risk-opportune manner, avoiding any language which may be deemed as negative or risk-averse, such as no appetite or little appetite. The previous statements from 24 and the revised statements from 25 have been included in Appendix 2 to ensure a clear comparison can be made. At paragraphs 9 to 11, this covers the corporate risk register. So the Strategic Risk Officers Group is predominantly responsible for the reviewing and updating, as well as the escalation of risks which sit at the strategic level. Over the last year, a total of 4 risks have been identified as emerging and added to the corporate risk register. These are namely workforce challenges, including the failure to implement the 3 delivery plans and the risk of industrial action, the economic impact of impending demographic changes, single software reliance as a business risk, and the use of artificial intelligence by employees. An extract of the corporate risk register highlighting the overall risk and mitigation for these 4 risks is attached at Appendix 3. Moving on to paragraph 12, service risk registers are covered. So like the corporate risk register, services have provided quarterly assessments of risk, which are updated on the Council's EPMS by nominated colleagues, of which there are now 2 or more within each service. In terms of a risk breakdown for both the Chief Executive's Office and Communities and Economy, an overview of this is provided at Appendix 4. Moving on to paragraphs 13 to 14, e-learning is covered. So the risk management e-learning module was launched in December 2024. The course objectives were noted in the strategy and again within this report at paragraph 13. 3 bulletins have been issued to encourage completion. From December 2024 until April 25, a total of 257 employees have completed the training council-wide, and a statistic breakdown by service can be found at Appendix 5. Implications are covered at paragraphs 15 to 16, with no implications noted other than risk throughout. Consultations are noted at paragraph 18, so it's been noted that both the Strategic Risk Officers Group and Council Management Team have been consulted in preparation for this report. That concludes the report, Chair, and Ian and I are happy to take any questions. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Emma, for that report. And Ian, were any questions, comments in the room, please? Or online? Elected members, you're all been shy the day. You may need to get more comments and questions. The one that popped out for me was about risk with weather and climate change and disasters events. I mean, we're looking back at Storm Éowyn and how that battered East Ayrshire and other parts of Scotland, and it sent our council officers into emergency management mode and coping with various issues. I don't know what's the financial impact to that and the risk, and how do we cope with something like that if that happens in the future?
Through you, Chair, the financial impact of that storm you mentioned, when we collate the financial consequence of that, was around £900,000. We sought permission and received approval to activate the Bellwyn scheme, which sets a limit. But happy to say that of that spend that we incurred, the vast majority of that was covered by insurance claims. Doesn't mean tomorrow our insurance premium is going to go up, but certainly it was costs were incurred and insurance claims were received from the majority of those services that you described, so housing and roads.
Thank you. And Ian, coming on the same subject.
Thanks, Chair. Just to supplement Joe's response there as well. So clearly environmental risk is on the Council's risk register as well, and that's regularly monitored. I think that's also supported by the really strong arrangements we've got for business continuity planning and service risk management as well. So that complete picture is certainly something that the Council management team and service management teams keep an eye on regularly. That is an increasing and an continuing emerging risk for the Council, given recent examples that you mentioned there as well. So, but it is a priority for us, and I don't see it ever coming off the risk register. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Ian and Joe. Councillor Cogley.
Yes, thank you very much. And two items that I wanted to raise in terms of the level of risk, which perhaps 4 years ago we may or may not have been so much on the radar. Cyber attacks, and we've seen huge negative impacts on some very big retail companies that you wouldn't have expected to have been impacted. You'd have thought they would have had effective procedures in place. And also war. Are we on a war footing or not? And again, what, if anything, can we as a council be doing in relation to that?
Ian or Joe, who's...
Joe, maybe want to come in on the digital, the cyber risk, Chair. I suppose just in general terms to give that reassurance to elected members that all of these emerging risks, and you know, this is a key role that Emma performs for the Council, is that horizon scanning for us. What are the main issues for us, whether that's global, and I think that's your point, Councillor Cogley, the global risks, and we do keep an eye on all of that, the impact it has locally on services and on partners is a priority for us. So just to give you that reassurance that is a key part of the risk management arrangements we have. Don't know if Joe wants to come back in on the cyber or digital risk thing.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So yeah, so quite right. Some real high-profile occasions and instances recently. From the Council side, the House, we have multi-layer cyber defences, and it's important to say it used to be called cyber security, is now cyber defence, because as you know from that training you got when you first came in as elected members, and the presentation from Paul and from Ian, you know that we receive around 2,000 or so attacks in different levels every day, and throughout the day and night. We've got the usual skill, the software that others have, but we also have additional options which provide assurance and surety. What I would say, however, though, is that as things become more complex, it's easy to safeguard the Council, but when the attacks come in through third-party organisations and supply chains and the like, you need to watch that bit too. But we've multi-layered and a process in place through help from colleagues across the Council, including especially procurement, in letting us go and receive further support that we've got more recently as well. So that's what I'd say about cyber. Always aware of it as the Head of Finance and ICT, concerned about the money, more concerned about the ICT side of the House, if I'm honest.
Thank you, Councillor Cogley, for the question, and Joe and Ian for the answers. I'm going to go online, Councillor. Sorry.
It was just to say, sorry, Chair, not to prolong things, but apologies if I missed it, if Joe mentioned it, but since the recent attacks, there's already been a paper to Cabinet which sought approval to bring in additional cover externally to supplement what was already in place internally, as Joe's described. So it's not just about then passing that worry to someone else. It's bringing in that extra level of expertise to add to those defences that Joe has described that have served as well so far, and also to highlight that we, as we understand and the learning is shared of how these, even the recent attacks took place, that we are continuing to make sure that our arrangements are reviewed and where necessary strengthened in light of that learning. Specifically, without getting into detail, there was social engineering, so folk actually managed to get in, I think, to the West Lothian one by phoning up and pretending to be somebody to get their password changed. It just should never happen, and probably every organisation's policy says it won't happen. but in practice it can happen. So it's ruling out any exercise of discretion, any deviation from policy, because it's as simple as that to then get the password changed, and then that allowed them access. So we always share. Sometimes it takes longer. SEPA took a wee while to share after theirs a few years ago, but we always share the learning and we always apply the learning, and we will always continue to take whatever steps are required to maintain those defences, because complacency is as big a threat as those out there that would wish to hack in.
Thank you, David. I'll go to Councillor Canning online and then Councillor Richardson.
Yeah, thanks for that report. Just a quick one. I was pleased to see the artificial intelligence brought on as a risk, and particularly the risk we miss out on opportunities. I'm just wondering, and obviously it's very helpful to see some of the things that are happening in that space, even in the report itself. I think it would be helpful, given the pace of change, for there to be some sort of regular reporting around artificial intelligence in terms of what the council is doing specifically, because it is obviously an area of huge and very fast-paced change. So I'm just wondering whether there'll be some opportunities to give us some reporting in the future. But really pleased to see it's on, and particularly the risk that we do miss out on opportunities. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Canning. Joe?
Through you, Chair, happy to consider the request from Councillor Canning, but more importantly, I think, is that point he made around being aware of the challenges within AI, but also grasping the opportunities. So the AI policy, which is just about finalised, and again, grateful to colleagues from across the council, particularly in information governance, because with the changes that are taking place, not just in AI, but in others, it tends to start off as an IT project, and then it goes into data management, information governance. And when the project proceeds, it tends to be 25% around the hardware of a digital project, and places an incredible burden on information governance. But that responsibility doesn't rest there; it rests with all of us. So we're doing a policy document on artificial intelligence that will set out the rules and the regulations and what AI is and what AI isn't, and AI is already here. But writing a document that, and this is an important part, is a set of rules and policies, but then is an enabling document that lets AI be taken forward by services, is important, just to pick up the point that you made, Councillor Canning. So the policy will be, it's on the tracker for CMT and thereafter for Cabinet, but it's been a document that's been a while in the making because of that collaboration that has to take place. And as you're writing a document with things are constantly moving as well, it adds another rather unusual dimension to it, but you'll see it shortly.
Thank you, Joe. Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Peter. It's just a quick question for possibly Joe or David, because they both had some input there. I was interested to hear the 2,000 cyber attacks a day figure. Doesn't surprise me, actually. It's probably what I would expect. But it was just to ask, of those 2,000 attacks a day, how many attacks are just stop stone dead by our antivirus, anti-cybercrime software, and how many, how can I put it, scratch the initial defences and then need people to get involved to stop it before it gets any further. So how many of those 2,000 are serious? That's what I'm asking. How many are stop stone dead by antivirus software, and how many are relatively serious? How many scratch the surface?
So through you, Chair, none get through. And as I said, it's multi-layered, both internal and external. And so I don't think I would have that information about what penetrates each level of defence. But maybe talk to members out with this setting, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, Joe. Councillor Sangster, did you want in?
No, my question was around artificial intelligence, so the question's already been asked and answered, so thank you.
Thank you. Elected members, the recommendations for this are page 155, paragraph 2. Approve the revised Strategic Risk Management Improvement Plan, approve the revised risk appetite statements, which are in Appendix 2. Otherwise, note the contents of the report. Happy with those recommendations. And thumbs up online. Thank you. I'd like to members, we've been going 2 hours, 5 minutes. I'm going to take a break for 25 minutes, if that's okay. We'll get you back here in 25 minutes, please. And we can pause the recording, please, Robert.